Hi, I'm Jennifer Bilbrey, and this is On Our Minds, a podcast and vlog about psychotherapy in Austin, Texas. Today I'll be interviewing Adam Maurer, a psychotherapist in Austin, Texas, who specializes in working with the LGBTQ+ community. We're going to be talking about how he works with this population and specifically about how politics and culture affect this population and his work with this population. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Jennifer.
So, since we did our last interview, a lot has happened in the world.
It sure has.
Yes. So, I'm thinking about how the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage.
What?
Shortly after that, now we have a new administration that is not so friendly to LGBTQ+ issues.
That is a polite way to say it.
Yes, it is. Why am I being polite? I don't know. So I want you to comment on that and on its effects on all that, because it's not all bad. There's some good in it, so it's a confusing mix. On the population you see and on how it affects the way you counsel people.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. So I see some younger people, like college-age students, and for folks who have only really known an administration that was much more supportive, it is a really scary time. And so, they haven't been through kind of like the wax and wane of what happens in politics. Mm-hmm. So all they see is a lot of things that are frightening to them. Where, some of the older folks that I work with, they're like, I was around when Reagan was here. This is nothing. Yeah. Uh-huh. And they feel a little bit more confident in just how politics works in that sense. So with younger populations, I see a little bit more anxiety and kind of confusion about what's going on and how to deal with that now. Yeah. It's just easy to take things for granted when you don't have to do the work of earning your rights or maintaining your rights. You just kind of exist a little bit. It kind of gives people a sense of safety that get taken for granted.
Yeah. So
currently in Texas, there are some...
Adam, as you're talking, it's just making me sad that that's the reality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm it's a little sad. It's the reality that I live in all the time. Yes. So there's probably a part of me that's this is just it.
Just what it is.
And the same way that you might, feel about sexism.
Yeah.
I just live in it.
Yes.
So currently in Texas, we had a lot of anti-LGBTQ+ bills go through. And I think for me personally, even in the past, there was a sense that, the federal government will have things in check. And so it was okay to feel a little maybe less angst about it. And now that that's not there, even that is challenging, just to see okay, we now have a bill about who can use a bathroom.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It is.
And enraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking openly about that in your office?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So
legislation you talk about?
So in working with the population I work with, if you're not open to talking about those things or making a space for people, a lot of them have learned to make themselves smaller. So they have learned to say, I just won't share this piece of me until I know it's okay. So they're scanning the room to make sure it's cool for them to be themselves.
Yeah.
So if I just say, hey, I saw this bill went through today, what do you think about it? Then it lets them know, we can talk about this and that's okay. And I see a lot of clients who are fluid in gender or sexuality. And so the ones who are fluid in gender, this stuff is impacting them on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
So they're thinking, can I present the way I want to present just to go out tonight?
Yeah.
So it's really impacted them in a great way.
And I'm thinking about the couples you see, too. Talk about the impact that the new administration is having on the couples you see.
So it's interesting.
You and I were talking about before we started about how I've been noticing more talk about narcissism. Just people being real comfortable with that word and knowing what it is and naming it when they see it. So I'm curious.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen in my couples work is folks who, some folks who are really outraged about things where the other partner might not be as upset.
Yeah.
And there's this conflict that can happen in the couple then. It's like, why aren't you as angry as I am?
Sure.
And, sometimes that comes down to things like privilege, right? So, and some of the couples that I see, there's definitely things like white privilege. And so it's like, well,
Or class privilege, perhaps.
I'm okay, and nothing's, this is not right. It's disturbing, but it's not really touching my life as much.
Like I have a good job, I'm not being discriminated against.
Yeah, I'm already married, so.
Yeah, okay.
It'd be easy, like in my circumstance, it would be easy to say all that. I'm already married to my partner. I'm self-employed, and I work part-time for an agency that, like, I'm a professional gay for them. Like, there's a lot of things. Yeah, I say I'm gay for pay. I'm a professional gay. So there's a lot of things, though, that make me feel comfortable. But I realize that those things, everyone does not have that.
No. Yeah.
And so it's a really different experience. I mean, I think about like folks who are living with HIV. There's a lot that the government does to help carry the cost of HIV care because it's expensive. And that being something that could be like written off as, oh, well, this is just too expensive, is really frightening to people living with HIV.
Because of the Medicaid cuts that are being proposed with the new healthcare
Some of that,
bill?
and some of that is also just with funding that would go to...
Oh, like grant funding? Or okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fear.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Recently, 6 people left the HIV Council for the President.
I heard this, yes.
Because they felt like...
They weren't being listened to.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So...
Yeah, and I can imagine those medications are not cheap. I mean...
They are not.
It's got to be...
You're talking thousands of dollars, something that most people could never afford on their own. And I've worked in HIV for 2.5 years. I ran HIV support groups. And it's a common fear that people have is once they're positive, like, how am I going to still be okay?
And not be like survive, be okay.
Yeah.
Not just like
not like okay, like in like
Right.
can I like exist on this plane?
Yeah.
But like, am I going to be able to eat
Yeah.
and get my medication? Yeah.
Are you still doing those HIV groups?
I don't do those groups anymore. I see some folks that are HIV positive, so I make space in my practice for folks to come in because it's important to me to give back to people who won't necessarily have access to some of the insight or knowledge that I might have.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm also thinking about how, we were talking about before we started, one of the things you were noticing in your couples was a lack of empathy.
Yes.
In you drawing kind of a straight line between the new administration and that showing up in your office. Yeah? Okay.
So I think for some folks, there is this sense that they're up against so much that it's easy to feel like, I just want my partner to like be perfect or get it or not be complicated. And so any sort of issue they might have.
That makes a lot of sense, Adam.
Yeah. Any issue they have then it's like, that's too much for me. And I'm talking about working with people who sometimes don't have the support of their family.
Yeah.
They might not be out at work. So they have these stressors that other people might not have to deal with.
Yeah.
So when you combine all that, it can be really difficult to say, let me just hear you and connect with you.
Yeah. And tolerate my own frustration because of whatever circumstances I have. Yeah. And then be able to tolerate yours too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I put it in perspective like this. If you're risking so much to be authentic, right? So you maybe give up your family, or you take the risk of giving them up. You risk your career, and then you come home to a partner and dinner isn't ready. It can be really easy to put a lot on the meaning of that. And then you add onto that.
Of feeling not supported maybe, or
like you don't think about me, you don't care about me.
I'm not a priority.
Yeah. This is, why did I even risk all this stuff?
Yeah.
And then when you combine some of the added stress of an administration that's not as really supportive for the community, that just amps all that stuff up.
Yeah.
Now, the couples who do well learn how to turn to each other and in this time and really it's almost like they combine forces to take on the issues that they see. So they're like, well, I can't necessarily change things on this macro level, but on this micro level, we could, volunteer for Out Youth, or we could make a potluck and take in people just to create community. That they figure out a way to take their frustration or anxiety or fear and turn it into something that's connecting.
Yeah. And in that, naming it, instead of it being hidden or invisible or like this too scary thing to talk about, it being open and naming it and talking about it and working with it. Yeah, that's exciting.
And giving them a way to like come together. Just to be like, it is another way that you can like join forces. You can actually be a stronger unit as you fight these problems you see in the world.
Exciting.
Yeah.
As you were talking a minute ago, I was thinking about something you and I talked about talking about around allostatic load.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like that idea of coming home and dinner's not ready.
And when you've had your resources kind of taxed all day.
Right.
And then think about it like this, Jennifer. This is a different way to think about it too. If you're not out at work, then you're having to like filter all that like all the time. So people ask you, what'd you do this weekend? And maybe you made a lovely like cake with your husband, but you can't say that. So you have to like alter what that's going to sound like.
Yeah.
And you spend all those resources and then finally you get home and you just are spent.
Yeah.
And you don't have any.
Yeah.
And
the important thing about what you're saying is that takes a toll, that inner like having to discern and juggle and figure it out before it comes out of your mouth. That takes a toll on our nervous systems, on our bodies. Yeah.
And right now we're in a society where there's like a 24-hour news cycle, and so you have all over the news, and it just
constantly
creates
bombarded.
Yeah, this constant state of like anxiety for folks who are always humming. They're just like, all I see is that
like
happening.
That way of thinking about it, always humming.
Yeah, and so then maybe when they come home, something happens, and finally it's something tangible to put all this like intangible stuff into. Yeah. And so it really is falling apart when the pot roast isn't ready. So a lot of the work that I do with couples around this is reframing things and helping them consider like the bigger pictures that are influencing what's going on.
Yeah. Boy, that's so helpful.
Yeah. Something that a lot of folks don't consider in our profession when working with this population is how folks coming out experiences impact their way of connecting with their partner.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. So say more. That's so important.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I remember in our first interview talking about something that had never occurred to me, that idea of the mini coming outs or comings out.
Yeah, you'd come out over and over again.
Over and over and over again. Whereas I think if you're not knowledgeable about that, you assume there's one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes people's coming out story is going to be something that they carry with them into all their relationships. And there can be like this underlying wound that's like something about me is going to be too challenging for people.
Too much.
Yeah. So, it can be really a difficult thing.
I'm thinking about that idea that a lot of people struggle with of at one and the same time feeling not enough and feeling like too much. Yeah. Yeah. What a confusing mix of feeling that is. Yeah. And that's what I hear what you're describing. Yeah.
And when I get couples who are in the LGBTQ plus community to start talking about, what their experiences were coming out, oftentimes they don't even recognize that like that impacts how they interact with other people. So for example, some people learn to hide who they are and do what they want without kind of like letting other people know. So they learn to circumvent the problem. So then, they're in...
what example are you thinking of?
So let's say you realize that your family's not down with you being gay, and so you don't come out, but you still date on the side. Okay. And so you might, find a partner, be dating, but you never tell your parents. So then, go down the road a little bit to your 30s, you have a conflict in your relationship, and instead of like having a conversation about it, you kind of go to what you know, which is you just circumvent things. You just go around it. And so it's really easy, I think, for us as couples therapists to like miss how much gold, like therapeutic gold, is in those moments of hearing and having people talk about that. Or, I've had people who were pushed out of the closet, right? So they had a partner write them a note someone found the note, they had this terrible experience. And after the fact, they learn, they really value privacy. And so anything that like violates or comes against that sense of privacy, is challenging. And then, we all are the heroes of our own story. So when we have a relationship issue, it's like, well, my partner's not doing their part. I'm obviously perfect. They're just not meeting my need. And so it's helping people understand, like, no, this isn't necessarily about you. Maybe they're private because of something in their past.
Yes.
And once you get people to talk about that, that's really powerful for relationship work.
The more you're talking about it, the more I see that therapeutic gold you're talking about. Yeah. I don't think I had really connected those dots quite like you're helping me to before this. Yeah, this is a lot.
The amazing one to me is like honesty. So some people learn that they have to lie to survive. They can't be honest with who they are.
Right, sure.
And they just carry that into like other relationships. And it's easy to take that behavior and judge it, but when you put it in perspective of survival, it's like, cool, that helped you survive as a kid, but you are no longer a child. You now have agency, money, autonomy, like you have all these things. So this no longer helps you thrive. And I just help people go, what do you want to do different? How can you be more honest with your partner?
That's awesome. That's so cool. It's inspiring to think about those, those connections.
She lives to inspire.
This was On Our Minds, a podcast and vlog about psychotherapy in Austin, Texas. Learn more and see more episodes on my website at www.jenniferbilbrey.com.